Hey, welcome to Journey Online. So glad you're watching with us. We're in the second part of a three-part series called Recession Proofing Your Life. When it comes to recession, we can give all of these different definitions, but this is where I've kind of landed for us, is a recession means we are in decline. When I was in school, recess was the best part of it. In life, recess is not. If your hair is receding, it's not your dream come true. If your finances are receding, not what you want. Recession means we're in decline. When it comes to life, we all go through these crazy periods of ups and downs. Wouldn't it be great if we could stabilize that, where we don't have these deep valleys and high mountains, but we could keep the highs, but recession proof. And that's what we're talking about. Matter of fact, last week, Jeremy talked about how to recession proof your finances, gave us just some super practical biblical imperatives that would help us level that off. Today, I want to talk to you about a second piece of that. A little bit under the weather, excuse the voice, excuse the cough, we'll make it through though. How to recession proof your relationships. I love talking about relationships because relationships mean a lot to me. However, usually I steer away from one word when we're talking about it. I very seldom would say recession proofing your marriage. A couple of reasons, the biggest reason being that often there are so many people who are watching this who will sit in a room with us that aren't married, and they're just as important. If you're awake right now and you're watching, then I don't want to leave you out of this. Although today I think I'm going to steer a little bit more toward it, and I think you'll understand why. What we want to talk about today is a change in how we think about some things. There are a lot of you who are single or single again. If that is you, here's a couple things that we can remember. One is there's a good probability that many of you who are single will be married. Honestly, the talk today would be much better suited for people before they get married than after they get married. The other piece is all of us have influence in this world around people who will be married, whether it's our kids or grandkids, whether it's our nieces or nephews, whether it's extended friends, whatever that is, we all have impact in that to help people start seeing this thing today that we're going to look at that would recession-proof our marriage is a game changer. And so I'm going to point it that way. If you're single, forgive me, give me a little latitude, but I think by the time we're finished, it'll help you understand some things that'll make your life better. Obviously, you can apply them to other relationships, but especially when it comes to marriage. Recession means we are in decline. The second piece of that is when people get married, they often include, if you have kind of formal vows, kind of the old school vows, we have this thrown in. It says, I promise to love and cherish you till death do us part. Evidently, this sentence is right out of Yoda's vocabulary, till death do us part, because that's how we all talk. But it uses these two words. I promise to love and cherish you. Love and cherish. And then we talk about love endlessly. I mean, it's a many splendored thing. It's on every card. It's the subject of chapters of the Bible that describe love in every way. And that's good because love is foundational. Without love, a marriage or a deep relationship is irrelevant. Love is foundational. It's huge. It's everything. Well, it's almost everything. But when we make these vows, we often say, I vow to or promise to love and cherish you. I've never heard anybody stand up and teach how to cherish. And so over the last few weeks, I've kind of been digging into this word, going, what do I do with that? And what I figured out is I have a lot to learn. I have plenty of room to grow when it comes to this word. So I want to kind of put our focus today, not on what it means to love, but what it means to cherish. While we're doing that, we'll mention some stuff around love. It'll help us contrast a little bit. Love focuses on what I am supposed to do. I need to show commitment. I need to persevere. I need to, all of the things that love does. It's active. It's things I should do. When it comes to cherish, though, it's a little bit different subject. Cherish is not about just the things I do. It's about something that goes a little bit deeper. Cherish focuses on the other person and their strengths. Love focuses on the other person, but it focuses on how I'm reacting to, how I'm engaging. This is a little bit different. Cherish focuses on the other person and their strengths. So whoever that person is in your life, it means we dig in and we begin to focus. I think that's a big word. Whereas love is the substance, love is like the bread, it's the basis for the sandwich we're making. Well, cherish would be like the jam. It's the delicious. It is the delight part. Cherish is what brings flavor back into things. Now, I'll just say this. We're talking about how to recession-proof a marriage, how to recession-proof relationships. All of us have been in relationships long enough to feel downturn, to feel like, man, what used to be all warm and fuzzy, what used to be all giddy and excited, what used to be I can't wait to get home, what used to be I can't wait to wake up in the morning now, can easily turn into monotony. Monogamy and monotony sometimes turn into the same thing. It becomes a survival. It becomes I'm going to stick with it because I know I should. And that was never the way God intended, especially intended our marriage to be. So when we learn to cherish, it's teaching us to do something that we need to do. It's to focus on the other person's strengths. That benefits the other person in a great way. But here's the little hidden gem in this. It benefits us just as much. So what is it to cherish here? I'll give you a little definition we're going to run with. To cherish is to develop a mindset, attitudes, and actions that that make me hold him or her in high regard. Let's just start and break it down. To develop is where it starts. When you say what it means to cherish is to develop, that means it's undeveloped. That means in most of us, we weren't taught this. I don't know what you were taught about relationships when you were growing up. Most of us have been taught some things, some of them good, certainly some of them not so good. This is a concept not only was I not taught, I'm not even sure the people in my life had a clue what it was. Maybe with different words, maybe different ways, but I'm just saying to develop a mindset, literally develop is the key to this. For me, it's one of the things I'd like a muscle that you would develop or a skill that you would develop or a habit that you would develop. I have to develop this. So here's a couple of things that I'm going to get pushback with today. This is like me having an argument with you while you're watching. There's going to be some people who say, I just don't do that kind of stuff. I'm not good at that. That's not the way I am. And I just want to say, if that's the way you feel when it comes to cherish, I totally understand. That's why we say it is to develop. If it's not the way you are, it's what you need to be. It's the way God intended you to be. It's the way relationships work best. It is what people who love each other learn to do. So develop is a huge piece of that. The other end of this, in high regard. Sometimes the reason we struggle is holding anyone in high regard is really difficult. One, it takes our eyes away from us. And one, it gives benefit of the doubt to someone else. We live in a society that hates both of those things. We tend to look at ourselves a lot, and we tend to love finding fault in others. And so to cherish, it is a huge adjustment for a lot of us. Here's what it means. It means we get past this word and we learn to live out this word. For a lot of people, you may be in a spot right now in your deepest, closest relationships where you are in a spot where you are tolerating, you are surviving. You're not being a quitter. That's what's keeping you together right now. You are tolerating another person. And hey, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because there's worse for sure. But I'm just saying God never created us just to tolerate and survive. He wants us to live in a place where we are loved fully and we love fully. And a piece of loving fully is this little word, cherished. So we have to learn a little bit how to do it. Part of the struggle is every relationship starts with this word, infatuation. Now, I've been reading a bunch the last few weeks about how we fall in love, which is one of the terms I hate. Fall in it like it's a pothole. I was walking along in the parking lot, wham, fell into it. But it does sometimes feel that way. Infatuation is passive. It just happens. I don't know what it was like with you when you first fell in love with someone, but you may be looking for it, but man, something just happens and you go, wow, I got the feels. This one's crazy. I can't get somebody out of my mind. I can't move on. I can't get past. It's passive in that it kind of comes on us. The sad part is it's temporary. There's actually some things that happen chemically in our brain and in our bodies when it comes to infatuation. And when it happens, here's what psychologists have figured out, is that it's temporary. Somewhere between 12 and 18 months, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more, but in that ballpark, this infatuation stage can land on you. It's why a lot of people, when you find them and they're dating somebody and you're like, hey, you might want to be careful, and they're like, no way, shut up, get out of my face, you don't know. It's because when all of this infatuation is happening, at least temporarily, we can lose a lot of insight. It also is declining, that it doesn't just start and it doesn't just finish, that there's often a slide down, that what once was infatuation, and maybe in this 12 to 18 months or 18 to 24 months, wherever it lands, it doesn't just stop, but over the course of time, it declines. And now some of the cute nuances, some of the things that made them special drive you a little bit crazy now. There's a big difference in infatuation and cherish. Whereas infatuation is passive, it just happens. And then once you have it, it's temporary. Well, to cherish someone is active. It's active. It takes effort. It puts you into play. It's not something that happens to you, it's something that happens through you. It's lasting. The longer you do it, the longer it lasts. The more you do it, it actually grows with time. It's one of the areas in life that you can look out into your future and say, this is something that's going to bring joy to me because I've developed this for the rest of my life. And it's not going to just stay where it is. It's going to continue to grow. Cherishing has massive benefits for you. It has massive benefits for the person that you cherish. It has massive benefits for those who are around us. That is the benefit. I'll ask you one last question and then we'll kind of move on from this. If you don't cherish them, your wife, your husband, the person in your life, if you don't cherish them, then who will? Now the easy answer is nobody. If you don't cherish them, no one will. But honestly, sometimes somebody will. The number of times I've sat with couples in counseling and they've talked about some unfortunate stories that they tell where one or the other said, yeah, I met somebody at work, and over the course of time, I never intended, I never thought I would be saying these things, but something happened, and they ended up being involved with someone they should have never been involved with. And then when you listen to their story, you kind of hear this song playing in the background, and what happened is this person cherished them. They found them amazing. They found something in someone else they didn't find at home. It doesn't make it okay. It's just an explanation, not an excuse. The truth of the matter is we all seek to be cherished by someone. It is built into our DNA. By the way, for some of you who are raising young children, the amount of impact you could have in their life if we would learn to cherish the people, cherish our spouse, cherish your husband, cherish your wife, would be overwhelming. By the way, let me just give you one more. If you're the dad, especially of a little girl, that little girl longs to be cherished more than anybody on planet Earth. And you can be such a bridge to this. Someday there may be the possibility of God bringing along another man in her life to cherish her. But between now and then, she will long to be cherished. And if you can help fill that space in her life, it will help her until she finds the person if God sends someone her way. Just understand, she will find someone. I hope that as fathers, we can fight hard to get past some of that ain't how I was raised. We can get past some of that, but that's not what I'm good at. And we can learn to cherish those little girls, because when we do, we free them up to become who they are, and we help slow down the craziness that's going on in their mind that just says, I want to find somebody, any way possible, I'm going to find somebody who really loves me or cares for me or cherishes me. And often when they're young, they don't have the ability to discern who does and who doesn't, who has motives that are pure and who have motives that are impure. And as dads, especially for us dads of daughters, man, we can play a decisive role in how that plays out for them. All right, let's turn the page a little bit and move on. If we're gonna become people who cherish, how do we do that? Well, first we have to develop a cherishing mindset. We use the word develop mindset and attitudes. It's not something we learn to do, it's a way we learn to think. That's where it all begins. It's no surprise in the Bible that we have a verse that says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you to a new person by changing the way you think. Here's the crazy thing, when we talk about cherish, most of us don't have 30 good illustrations to go, oh, like Bob or Pete or Mary or Sally or whoever. We don't have a lot of great examples because most of us haven't grown up watching this in play. It's why we're not going to copy the behaviors of people who've just tolerated life, tolerated marriage, tolerated relationships. We're going to set a new course. And the way we start with that is by changing the way we think. If you say, I'm just not sure I can do that, I'm pretty set in my ways, here's the good news, is let God transform you. That God wants to change how you think. He wants to change how you process. He wants to change how all of this plays out in you. That's the good news. It's not up to you to do it all alone. It's up to you to allow God to be a big part of that. So here's where we start. We have to change how we think and how we process. Second piece, we're not only going to develop a cherishing mindset, we're going to choose to be mentally faithful. This is a tough one. It's a tough one to even talk about. By the way, when you see a word like this, there's going to be people who are watching this that is a trigger for you because you've had someone or someones in your life who haven't been faithful. And it already just cranks you up. It already makes you on edge. And I just want to say it's not the intention, but this thing of being mentally faithful is something that we have to learn, we have to grow in. Here's some things that help us get there. One, we've got to recognize that we can't compare. Comparisons are so dangerous. Before we finish this out, let me just say this. When God started the human race, He put Adam and Eve on planet Earth. He made Adam, then He said, we can improve on this, or we can add to this, and He gave us Eve. When He did, He gave them the choice to pick anybody on the planet that they wanted to be with, and they chose each other. Now, I'll admit that was the only person they could choose, but He gave them choice, and they chose. They were at such an advantage over us. When Adam saw Eve and he went, wow, I like that. That is just right. He didn't say, I just wish you were a little taller. I used to date a girl who was pretty tall, and I wish she was shorter. I wish she had less curves, more curves. I wish she was a little smarter, more verbal. I wish she was a little more athletic. I wish she was less opinionated, more. He didn't say any of those things. You know what he said? Yes. Just what I want. Just what I need. When Eve saw Adam, she didn't say, I really like guys who have a little broader shoulders or a little taller, a little short. I like guys who are a little more chill or relaxed. I like guys who are more decisive. I wish he could have been a little, you know why? Because there was no comparison. She looked at him and he looked at her and said, yes, just right. Now, they were far from perfect. We don't have to read hardly any verses from their creation to realize that they were far from perfect. But what they started with was this attitude of yes. Here's the reason. Comparisons always lead to contempt. The more we compare our somebody to somebody else, the more contempt we find in our life. Here's the reason. We usually compare someone else's strength to our spouse's weakness. We look at the person that we've promised to love and cherish, and we look at somebody else and go, I wish he were more like that. Why can't he do that? That guy's great at that. And often what we're doing is comparing him to somebody else's strength. Unfortunately, that may be your spouse's weakness. It's not fair. Maybe a better word than fair, it's not helpful. Comparison leads to contempt. Let me give you one more. Comparison destroys contentment. The more time you spend your life, it's one of the scary things about social media. It's one of the scary things about living in a big wide open world where we see everything. The more time you spend comparing your life to somebody else's, usually where you end up is discontented with your life. When other people are putting their highlight reel on show for you, and then you're looking at your life, when you're looking at your lousy old ham and cheese sandwich while they're eating whatever place they just landed, and the food that's there, it's like, man, I wish I had that life. While there was somebody always smiling because nobody ever shows their bad stuff on those things, contentment is destroyed by comparison. We used to live in East Africa, and one of the things we figured out is when we went there, we felt so sorry for the people in Tanzania. They were the third poorest country in the world. That my shoes cost more than a lot of their net worth. Felt horrible for them. After we were there for a few months, you know what we realized? They were happier people than we were. They had nothing. Most of them owned 1 or 2 or 3, maybe, changes of clothes. Most of them lived in a little house, hut-like, that had a dirt floor. Maybe they had one raw light bulb hanging from the ceiling, so they had a little electricity. Most of them had to go bring their water back and cook it on something before you could even use it. Most of them had all of these struggles, and when you got to know them, they seemed happier than most people I knew back in the States, and sometimes more so than me. And one of the reasons is they lived isolated lives, and because of that, they didn't see what the rest of the world was doing. The more they recognized what everybody here was doing, the less they liked what they did. One of the things we wanted so badly to do would be bring some of our friends from there back to the States and let them just see what life is like here so they can enjoy the benefits of it. To be able to share with people what God is doing there so it would help more people invest in ministry there. The problem is if you bring somebody back here, most of the time they'll never go back home. They'll never be content with the life they had. You know why? Because comparisons destroy contentment. It happens in so many of us. It certainly happens when it comes to marriage. We need to learn to say this: I cherish you for who you are, instead of I judge you for who you're not. This one is kind of least common denominator thinking. It's hitting that point where we go, hey, but I'm just telling you, you don't have to try to end up here. Maybe judge is not the word you would use, but here's where we're supposed to live. I cherish you for who you are. I see the value in you. Even if others don't, even if it's not always perfect, even if it's not playing out exactly the way I would want it, I still see you for who you are, and who you are is God's creation. Who you are is valuable. Who you are is the person I chose to share my life with. It's what we're supposed to do. It's where we're supposed to live. Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 8 says this. It says, there's no one like her on the earth. You could change this if you're with a hymn. There's no one like him on earth. Never has been, never will be. Now, most of us would say that about our spouse, good or bad. Ain't nobody like them. There's no one like her or him on earth. Never has been, never. She's a woman beyond compare. You might say he's a man beyond compare if it's your husband. It's an attitude. It is reaching a point in life where we quit saying, I wish I had, or if I could do it over. We reach a point where we quit saying, I wish they'd be better, and we reach and we find and say, listen, I'm going to find their value every day in my life. And when I do, I'm going to cherish them. I'm going to treat them. I'm going to speak of them to other people in a way where it seems that they are cherished. These will be words that I would share, or words like them. If this doesn't sound like you, do it your way. There is no one like you. I don't want anyone else. I don't need the person on the computer who's had lots of airbrushing. I don't need to click on that image and find somebody who'll do things you want. I don't need to look across the restaurant or the ball field or the wherever you are to find somebody who is what you aren't. As a matter of fact, here's what I would say to you. There's no one like you. There's never been. You are a person beyond compare. If you were Adam, you know what he would have said? You are my Eve. You are my Eve. And that's enough. If you were Eve, can you imagine guys walking in your door at home, and each day being greeted not just with these words, but with this mindset that just says, you are my, fill in the blank, you are my husband. No one like you, never has been, never will be. Can you imagine what that would do? Now, there's some of you who go, hey, I think all this cherish stuff feels like I got to turn in my guy card. I'm going to tell you this, I think you better get a bigger guy card, because this takes a different level of human being to live this way. We're raising the level of what you can and can't do. I think it takes a man or a woman of great character. It actually takes a person who is willing to follow Jesus enough to let him fix these broken pieces in our life and take us somewhere else. So we said you need to develop a cherishing mindset. You need to choose to be mentally faithful. And the third thing is you need to learn to showcase the one you love. A few years ago, we lived in a place one of our people in our church was building a house for kind of a guy who was a celebrity, had been a celebrity. Maybe you know his name was Andy Williams. He's actually passed away about a decade ago now, but he was building this big house for him. When he got 80-90% of the way through, he said, hey, why don't you come by and see it while we're still building it? It's amazing. I went by, and they had done so many cool things, and it was huge and elaborate, and there was a primary suite closet, that was about the size of my house. You could get lost in there, have to sit down and take a nap to get back out because you were tired. There were so many amazing things. And I said, well, what are you doing right now? And he said, me and my other guy that's working with me, we're hanging art for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm like, you're hanging pictures for the next 3 or 4 weeks? No, I'm hanging art. Whoa, excuse me there, Bucky. Why? I'm thinking he is paying finished carpenters for 3 or 4 weeks, thousands of dollars. At my house, listen, we hang our art, but usually it takes about, 3 hours and a few little finishing nails or some tape or something. What in the world are you doing? And then he started talking about it. And some of the place they were hanging them, they had to bring electricity in because there were lights above them. Some of them had special sensors for security. Some of them had special installation processes. And he goes, this is where the Picasso is going to be. And this is where, that's about it for my art. That's where this, and that's where this, and that's where this is going to sit. We're building this whole thing because there's a vase that'll sit here, not a vase. I have vases, he had vases. That's where it's going to sit, all of those things. Well, I looked in the paperback about a decade ago, and Mr. Williams had passed away. And not long after he did, they took his art and they auctioned it at Christie's. And when they did, his art brought over $46 million. And you look at it and say, why would he spend that much money just to hang it properly, just to make sure it never fell, to make sure the light was there, to make sure some of the rooms had been specially built so the outside light would reflect just right on that at different times of day. And I'm like, yeah, that ain't how it works in my world. But that's what happens when you cherish something. You say, I'm going to learn to showcase this as something I love. Now, for some of you, that's your truck or your gun. For some of you, it's your home or your decor, or maybe when you first get engaged, it's the ring on your finger. You watch girls who've just gotten engaged, how they seem to be able to do almost everything with that out front. For some of you, maybe that's your baby or your grandbaby, and you notice yourself showcasing them all the time. That's what we do when we cherish something. When something's really important to us, we find a way to showcase it. And that is our role as a husband or a wife. This is how we're supposed to see life. We don't get married so I can find somebody to make me less lonely. We get married so I can spend my life showcasing them and showing their best part and making them better and investing in them. I can cherish them as if there is none like them. No, not even one. Never been, never will be. That's our role. Can you imagine life living with someone who saw you that way every day? You never wondered what they were saying about you at work because you knew this is their goal, is to showcase the one you love. You never wondered what they were thinking because they spent their life recognizing the value in you and helping you find a way to live up to it. The problem is, over time, we naturally begin to see what disappoints us. One of the reasons that there's recession in our life, in our relationship, is that we can start off with all this buzz about here's what I love, and over time we begin to focus on what disappoints us, and sometimes we've had plenty of that. We've had a lot of that to work with. Disappointment is not hard to find. If you spend time with somebody else, every person is going to disappoint us. You know that's true. At our best, we have that capacity almost every day. I think there has to be a flip of the switch, a flip of our mindset that I'm going to look for things. I'm going to scan the horizon and look for things that I can showcase, that I can help strength become more strong instead of judgment and instead of tearing you down. One of the big pushbacks when I get finished with this, and I'm just about done now, is going to be some of you who are sitting right wherever your little world is. And you're saying, Chris, that all sounds great. I would love to do that. And if I were starting over, I would. If I had a better spouse, if I weren't married to the person, you don't know what I've been through. And I just want to say this, you're right, and I would never pretend that I do. The truth is, none of us have had perfect situations, but some have had really imperfect ones, really broken ones. I'm not shooting at you, but I'm just saying any of us can say, if I had a better spouse, I would do differently. When we were traveling, raising support to go overseas, we had a lady who came up after church one time and she said, she heard all about all of our plans and dreams and things that God was already doing. And she said, if I had $1 million, I would support you guys and I would help you guys. And I don't know why, maybe I was just having a bad day or whatever. And I said, ma'am, I just want to say this, you probably wouldn't. Because if you can't do it now, you probably wouldn't do it then. If you had $1 million, you'd be consumed with it. It is so easy to live in the if I had world. And can I just say, you're probably right. If you had a better spouse, it would be easier to do. But you have who you have. If you have a spouse right now, you have who you have. You're someday going to have who you have. You're going to influence people to help them do better with who they have. And so somewhere we can't live in the if I had, we have to live in the because I have. And when we do, if we can learn to cherish the people that God has put in our lives, the people we have chosen in our lives, that's when life begins to change. If I had a better spouse, a lot of things would be different. But this is a way that I can actually begin to help have a better spouse, because people who are cherished grow and thrive. Let me just show you this last thing. The reason that I think we should do this is it's exactly what God has done for us. Ephesians 2:10 says, we are God's masterpiece. Just stop for a minute. You think of how screwed up this world is. Imagine God looking down at all of the garbage in the universe right now. Imagine the hurt, the anguish, the frustration, the unfaithfulness of a world that's supposed to follow God. And he says we are God's masterpiece. Just look at me and the areas in my life where I have come woefully short of who I should be, and God still sees me as his masterpiece. You want me to tell you the amazing thing? As a follower of Jesus, God sees me through two things. He sees me through the blood and through the forgiveness of his Son. That changes everything. He doesn't see me for who I was. He sees me for the new person he's made me. And let me give you the second part. He sees me for who I can be and my potential. He sees in me what can be when I grow, when I offer myself and submit myself to him. That's why he says we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do good things he planned for us long ago. He sees where we can be, if we'll allow him to change us. That is something we have to transfer. We have to take that in, and we have to offer to the people around us. That any idiot can look at somebody and say, well, let me tell you what's wrong with you. But it takes a special idiot to look and say, I see what you can be, what you could be, and what you're becoming. That's what we're called to do. That's what we commit to do. We say, I promise or I vow to love and to cherish you. Let me give you one last thing. God told them, talking to the people he loves, way back in Jeremiah, God speaking to his people. It certainly applies to us. God told them, I've never quit loving you and never will. These are amazing words. For some of you go, hey, I'm a guy, I don't really do that. This is the same God of the universe who smote whole armies and killed them. This is the same God who has done things that you go, wow, that seems harsh. This is that God. He says, I've never quit loving you and I never will. Expect love, and more love. And so now I'll start over with you and I'll build you up. I wonder if this could become your prayer with whoever it is God has given you in your life. If it's not a spouse, whoever it is closest to you. To just say, hey, maybe you've been working at it a long time, but it hasn't been what it ought to be. So now I'll start over with you and I'll build you up. I'm going to cherish a big part of my arsenal. Gary Thomas wrote a book titled Cherish. I've read it. It's been super challenging for me over the last couple of weeks. He says that he started doing this because he thought it would be a good exercise and he would give a present to his wife. He said, for 1 year, I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to write down something that I cherish about my wife. And at the end of the year, I'm going to give her this little book with all of my little notes in it about what I cherish. And it's going to be wonderful for her. And for an entire year, he did it. He talked about how sometimes he had to look. I mean, you can't accidentally cherish. Nobody just falls into that hole. Cherish is something you have to choose to do. You have to allow your mindset to be changed. He said as he began to do it, though, it began to change him. It became more normal for him to look for the great things in his wife. He found himself beginning to love her more, become more attracted to her, become more infatuated with her. By the end of it, when he said he gave it to his wife, as much as it was good that he had been doing that and she could see it, he said, I think it changed me more than it did her because it helped me become the person God created me to become. Can I just tell you, wives, if you can learn to cherish your husband the way we need to learn to cherish. Husbands, if you could with your wife, for those of you who are single, can I just say this? Do not marry someone who does not cherish you, especially for some of you ladies. Especially for some of you who make excuses for, yeah, he doesn't, but I think he'll get better. Run. What you see is as good as it's going to get. Do not jump into a marriage. For some of you got out of one like that. Do not jump into a marriage where the person there doesn't cherish you, showcase you. Because that's what people are supposed to do, just like God has done for us. Man, what a challenge. I'm not going to challenge you to go a year and write down something every day because none of us are going to do that. Unless first we do this, I wonder if for 1 week, if you could just wake up, if you're married, if you could just wake up, if you got a significant other you're engaged to or you're thinking about marriage, if you could do this. If you've got someone else in your life that they're just a big impact player in your life, maybe the same thing. Could you just wake up every day and before you get too far along in your day, just write down something you cherish about them. Or maybe for you, before you go to bed at night, look back over your day and say, I choose to cherish this. If you choose to tell them, that would be great. But even if you don't, because you will be changed. It will change the way you approach the people around you. It'll change the way you love. And can you imagine living with another human being that every day wakes up looking for something good in you? It's what we were designed for. It's what God does for us. And it's why he put human beings on this earth. We have lost track of this one. But when we promise to love and cherish, love is great, but cherish is what makes it sweet. And we can do better with that. So God, help us with that. We would ask in your name. Amen. Thanks a lot.